Welcome to the Matt Phillips Podcast. I am Matt Phillips, your sales leadership coach, mental toughness expert, and founder of Matt Phillips Coaching. We help sales managers and leaders make more money, save time, and become kick-ass leaders of their sales teams. And that's what we're here to talk about on this podcast. We are here to give you the tools and tactics to build a well-oiled sales machine and teach you the mental toughness skills so you can show up confident, focused, emotionally in control, and ready to energize your team. It's time to talk sales leadership and mental toughness. Let's get into today's episode. Well, welcome to today's podcast. It is Matt back with you again and excited to dive into this topic today that actually came out of a conversation that I had with a Stanley Cup-winning goalie with the Colorado Avalanche. And it's interesting when you talk to different people with different backgrounds, and this individual that I'll dive into here in a minute, we were talking extensively just about like high performance or what it takes to get to the highest level, right? So when you get to the National Hockey League and you're able to stay there for a long time, I was just very curious to dive into this individual's background, understand like what made you so unique that you were able to achieve that. And I'll talk about a couple of those points today, but it was one thing he brought up in particular that really I thought was fascinating and interesting. And it's the power of coaching. It's the power of leading a team. That if we adopt this perspective that a coach of his actually completely shifted the way he looked at the game, you can do that with your team and with your people. And that's where like amazing things happen, right? I'm a big believer in, how do we set our people up for success? Right? How do we make them the best versions of ourselves? And if they decide to move on, and maybe that's a different role within the company, maybe that's a different role within your department, maybe it's just they move on to something completely different. But we can walk away as leaders and know that like we did everything that under our power to create the best versions of themselves. So they're ready for that next thing, whatever that thing might be. And that's what I believe the power of coaching is. Like you're going to hear me talk about, yes, I know you're in charge of a team, or maybe you want to be in charge of a team, right? So if you are in charge of a team, it's like, well, I'm managing these people. No, you're not managing these people. You're coaching these people, and you have to have that shift, that perspective. Also, if you want to get into management, you're not managing, you're coaching. And I go in depth on that in the webinar that we have, this free masterclass. But so I won't spend too much time today, but when I heard this conversation with this Avalanche goalie, it was a coach that impacted how I completely saw the game. And so to give you a little background of how I got to this meeting, my son plays hockey for a high school here. He's a sophomore in high school as of the recording of this podcast. So if you're listening to this 2 years later, he's a senior. And one of his teammates, the dad's, is heavily involved with the Colorado Avalanche. So I got a text from this dad one day saying, hey, there's this goalie, I thought you'd be interested to talk to him and kind of hear his story a little bit. And so we met for coffee. And this individual, his name is Pavel Francouz. So you can go look him up. But again, Stanley Cup-winning goalie with the Colorado Avalanche just a couple of years ago. And I was so excited to meet him because, again, part of my business, I've got part of my business working with professional athletes. And so to talk high performance and see how he got to this level, I was so excited to just meet him and talk with him. He's from the Czech Republic originally, has lived in Denver for a number of years. And so he's got a fascinating background too. So that aside, I had, obviously lived in Switzerland for a number of years. I played pro baseball in Europe for a little while. And so we had that kind of European connection as well. So case in point, I was just like, I get to, sit with another European, a place I've lived, talk about it. I've been to the Czech Republic a bunch of times. So we're just going to have a really fun conversation. And so we sat down for coffee and started talking about different coaches he had and, what made him get to the next level. And the first, thing that I'll point out before I get to the main point of the topic today is I talked like, what made you so successful? And one of the points that he brought up, and he's such a humble individual. It was such a fun conversation. But one of the things he said was, I love hockey. And from a young age, he shared that he just had this love for the game. And he was always out, working on his goalie skill set. So it might have been the middle of summer. There's he said there was no indoor hockey rink in his town. So when the ice melted, like hockey season was done, and he'd go off to play, soccer or, football, whatever that he was doing. But he was always outside. He had a wall in front of him and he was throwing balls off the wall and catching it and practicing his goalie. But he said it wasn't a chore. It wasn't like he was checking off something off a list. It was this, he loved it. And so he said it was that love of the game that he believed made him do that extra work that, he was fortunate to, I think if I remember correctly, I need to have him on as a podcast guest actually, but he was in the Czech professional league by age 18, if I'm remembering right. And then he went to the Russian professional league and then ultimately came over to the United States to play in the NHL. But he said that love just was throughout from a very, very young age. And I think that's something really important too, because, as leaders, and salespeople or whatever your role might be, we have to have that love for what we're doing, like that passion, that fire. I mean, when I wake up in the morning, even knowing that I had to record this podcast, right? It's not that I have to do this. It's like I get to, like, this is exciting. This is fun for me to be able to connect with you on this podcast. So it's not a chore for me. I have the love, just like Pavel did for hockey. And I want to make sure you do as well, right? Are you waking up energized and passionate about what you're doing? Like, do you have the love still? Because there's amazing roles out there, amazing companies that you can find that and do that. And I think that's such an important thing. Otherwise, because it becomes the grind, right? It's something that we have to do instead of something that we actually love doing. And listen, part of that conversation too was that doesn't mean if you have love that things aren't easy or that you get to, or that things are, seamless, or that you never have challenges, or that you get to do what you love 100% of the time. Like, no, it's getting to a point where you're doing what you love and you're dealing with the challenges along the way, but it's the love of what you're doing, the passion behind it that pushes you through. At least that's what I experience in every single day. But I love that piece of it, right? Because when I look at, people in business, especially, they might be in a sales role or something like that. It's like, do you have the love? Like, do you actually like what you're doing? I think the same thing is true in young athletes that I work with as well. Of, my goodness, I'm going to ask you to do something. Do you even like the sport you play? Because if you do, heck of a lot easier to do the work. So that was one thing that really just stuck out to me in that conversation with Pavel. The second thing is the point of this podcast right now, 7 minutes in, get me going. I tell you, get me going. But was he shared a quick story about one of the coaches that he had when he came to the Avalanche. And it was a goalie coach. And he said, when you're a goalie coming up, they teach you to watch the puck, right? So if you can picture a goalie standing in net, it's like, watch the puck, watch the puck, watch the puck, right? So wherever the puck is, that's where your head should be. That's where your eyes should be. And he said it was interesting. And obviously he's very good anyway, right? With that strategy. But he said this one coach with the Avalanche completely shifted his perspective. And he said, he taught me to see the game, not the play. He taught me to see the game, not the play. Another way to say it, he taught me to watch the game, not the puck. And I was like, well, that's a really interesting point. Talk to me more about that. And he said, again, when you grow up, you're watching the puck, watching the puck, watching the puck. Well, that puts you kind of in a reactive state because you're not paying attention to everything going on. You're not looking at the field. You're not looking at how the flow of the game to understand where the puck is going next. And I love, Wayne Gretzky's got a great quote that, he said that he went to where the puck was going to be, not where it was at. He was playing the game. He understood how the play was going to develop and unfold, and he went to that spot where it was going to be, not where it was currently at. And I love that perspective. And Pavel was saying the same thing. So if you can picture in your mind, like maybe the puck is straight in front of Pavel. Well, there's this guy over here to the left of him. And that guy is going to shift. He's going to move somewhere. And guess where the puck's going? To that guy. So what Pavel started to understand as he looked at the field, as he looked at the game and he understood it, was I don't have to always watch the puck. Of course, I need to know where the puck is, but I also have to understand the play that's developing. And so he started to notice differently that this guy was moving to the left over here. And all of a sudden he would shift a little bit because he knew the puck was already going there. Help his save percentage, help him be more successful, help his team be more successful because he was understanding the game, not just that play. And this one comment that he made, made me think about from a leadership perspective, our job, we're here to coach people. And I love that perspective of taking people and saying, listen, I know you understand what you do, right? You understand where the puck is. You understand the play that's going on right now, but do you understand the game that's being played? And you understand how what you do impacts others and how it fits in and how it benefits and the impact that it has on everything else that we do, and make sure they understand the game. For all you sales managers and leaders out there, I wonder if you've ever thought the phrase, why in the world did I sign up for this? I know I have. And the reality is that leading a team of salespeople can be challenging, right? Just figuring out how to motivate each person and keep the pipeline full and just dealing with the pressure of delivering the month after month results that your company's requiring. And call me an optimist, but amidst the challenge, amidst sometimes the frustration, we have this opportunity in front of us to really impart our knowledge, right? And to leave that legacy on our team and just achieve next level results. And that's why today I want to personally invite you to our free masterclass training, where I'm going to share the exact secrets, the exact framework that I teach sales leaders around North America to help just take you to next level results for you and your team. And it's actually the exact framework that I taught one of my clients who, over a 12-month period, tripled organic revenue growth and increased margin by 30%. So I want to invite you to that masterclass. You can click the link below or head over to mattphillipscoaching.com/webinar. And can't wait to see you in the training. And it's not that we're playing a game or we're trying to manipulate someone or win or lose or something like that, but it's you are part of something bigger than yourself. And when you understand the bigger context, we can all be more successful together. I think that's one of the things from a leadership perspective we have to understand. And as a coach, as a manager of people, we have to do is teach people about how everything works together. And understand if we do this, there's a ripple impact over here, meaning the puck's going to shift where it needs to go, and we need to be paying attention. Another saying that you're probably familiar with is you hear sometimes that people can't see the forest through the trees. You ever heard that? Well, it's kind of the same thing of if I'm paying attention to the puck and only the puck, I'm not paying attention to the game. And everything is linked. And one of the trainings that I'm actually recording later today is around metrics. And I think this fits in very, very well, right? If I'm a salesperson and I'm there to drive revenue, then I'm going to drive revenue at whatever cost to margin, because my job is to drive revenue. You want 500 million in revenue? I'm going to get you to 500 million in revenue. We're going to make no money, but I'm going to get you to 500 million in revenue, right? And I'm joking, right? You hopefully make a lot of money at 500 million. But it's understanding that we can't just focus on the puck. We have to understand the game. And part of the game is we have to have a margin, for example. We have to have a healthy margin so we can support the business. And so on this training, I'm walking through we have this sales metrics cheat sheet. You can go over to mattphillipscoaching.com/metrics and download it for free. But I'm going to walk through a couple of these to really press this point home of do your people understand their numbers? Do they understand the game, not just one piece of what they're doing? And that relates to metrics. It relates to the sales process. It relates to all the operational things that we do to deliver what we said we're going to deliver. Everything is linked if I understand the game and see it from a different perspective, a different lens. And just like Pavel, his perspective completely shifted. I mean, it's almost like this. It goes from that, I've got the horse blinders on, keeping me focused on I'm running this race, to take the blinders off. And now I can see that, oh my gosh, where I'm running this race is gorgeous, beautiful. I mean, there's mountains everywhere. I just didn't notice them because I had my blinders on. And blinders aren't bad. Don't take this the wrong way. But I love that comment from Pavel of see the game, not just the play, not just the puck. So when you are coaching and training your team, I want you to consider that, are you taking time to explain, to talk to them, to get their perspective on how what they do fits into the overall game. And I remember this one story that if you haven't listened to the podcast with Steve Schaub, Schaub, we'll link it up in the show notes as well. But he's the CEO of a company called Yes Communities, amazing company. And he shared a story on that podcast about a title clerk, right? So they're in the business of basically affordable housing, right? So they are getting people access to their very first homes ever. And there's this title clerk. And he walked up to this clerk one day and said, "Oh, tell me a little about what you do." And he's such a dynamic guy. He said, "Tell me about what you do." And he said, "Well, I just, file this paperwork here and there." And he goes, No. He goes, "Yes, you do that." But he said, "You have to understand that you are the last critical link into us being able to hand the keys to these individuals for their very first home. What you do is important." And Pavel's saying that about the game of hockey, and Steve's saying that about this person who is filing title paperwork for homes is really the same thing, right? Of understand, take yourself out of the play, take yourself out of the day-to-day stuff, and let's shift your focus to the overall important thing where you can see things differently, react differently, understand that what you do is part of something bigger, grander. And if we understand that, everything we do shifts, right? And the success that we will achieve is going to be more, right? Like that title clerk, I guarantee he or she, I don't know if it was a he or she, I can't remember now, but that individual, they're going to have a purpose, like a greater drive to what they're doing. And they're going to understand what they do matters to the overall mission of this organization. Pavel, by starting to see the game differently, by his teammates starting to see the game differently, is going to increase their chances of success. So they're just not playing to play. They're not playing their position to play their position. They're attacking things with this view of let's understand the flow so we can experience the greatest amount of success. That's what the perspective I want you to have. Are you helping your team see the game and not just the play? To see the game and not just the puck, to see the bigger overall mission and how they fit in, the impact that they can have, not just what they do every day. Key shift in leadership that I wanted to share with you today. And, I was actually, as I did this too, brainstorming people. And this is the other thing I want you to really get thinking about. I wonder if there's individuals in your life, like a Steve or that coach for Pavel, that have impacted you and had you see things differently. And I was just brainstorming a couple things, people, I should say, not things, people that have impacted me. And the first name that came to my mind was my wife, actually. And Shannon, hopefully, if you get a chance to meet her, you need to meet her. She's an incredible individual, mother, wife, but she has this perspective of she wants to do things differently in life, right? And how she takes care of herself as far as eating and working out, things like that. She wants to do things differently, not follow the crowd, all this sort of stuff. And she's taught me to see things differently from that lens. And I've had part of that drive in my life. She's next level with some of this stuff. And so she's one that's impacted me and helped me see things differently. There's a man named Gary Bishop, who is one of my high school baseball coaches, actually, for one summer after my senior year. And Gary actually helped me. I'm uncomfortable calling him Gary. Coach Bishop. Well, I can't even call him Gary. Goodness sake. Coach Bishop, he changed my perspective on the possibility for my future. Because I'll never forget, he came up to me. It was the very last game of the summer. I was going off to Creighton University. I was kind of thinking about walking on there. I wasn't recruited by Creighton, but I don't know. I was on the fence, to be honest. And he came up to me after that last game of the year and he said, "You must try out at Creighton. You have to." And I'll never forget that because I actually did. And, if you listen to the podcast, you probably know a little bit about my story, but I tried out. I was actually cut my freshman year after 2 days. Tried out again on a dare from a friend. My sophomore year, made the team, played for the next 3 years. That opened up a professional opportunity for me. And I don't think I would have tried out if Coach Bishop hadn't told me to do that, because what he was ultimately saying is like, Matt, the possibility's there. You need to go do it and take a chance. And he was telling me I could play at that level. And he was right. And he helped me see beyond myself in that moment. Now, I think of two of my very first bosses that I had in my audit days. Jeff Ballou, John Alton was another one over in Switzerland. And those, and even Curtis Krentz, those three individuals had such a unique perspective on teaching me about business and how things fit together and how to look at business, not just from a transactional perspective, but from a process perspective, a flow perspective. And I'm so thankful to those individuals, amongst many others, that on my journey are skills that I still utilize to this day. And I remember one story when I was living over in Switzerland, and, back in those days, I was solely focused on financial services. So I had one of the biggest banks in the world as one of my clients. And one of the parts I'd work on was the investment bank. And so they had all these crazy products, like these derivatives. And they were complex to understand. But this John Alton, for example, had this such unique way of sitting me down and simplifying it so much where even I was like, oh, I actually understand that. Whereas if I read it on paper, I'm like, what? You're doing this bridge to that? And I'm like, I have no idea what the heck this is. But John had this unique ability to sit down and simplify it. So he helped me understand, not just, Matt, it's not just a product, like understand the theory, understand the game that's being played here and the overall picture. He was so good at that. Something that I've tried to utilize now with my love of whiteboards, but drawing things out. And this one instance I have in my mind right now was actually we're auditing a treasury function of a massive agrochemical company. And they had this one derivatives thing set up, and it was a swap with something else, not to bore you, but he had a whiteboard and he drew it out for me. Maybe that's where my love of whiteboards started. Thank you, John. But I love him now. And I also think the other two names I wrote down were Jim Brogan and Danny Ballard. And Jim, I actually had him on my podcast just a couple of weeks ago, so go check that one out. But he works with executives. His bread and butter is NFL quarterbacks, Major League Baseball players. It's a pretty cool interview, and he's my coach. But Jim and Danny, again, they help take you from super highly focused to let's back up for a minute and understand why we're doing this and understand how the whole thing works. And so I want you to think a little bit, maybe there's individuals who've helped you shift that perspective too. I call it a coach, a mentor, a friend, a family member, a husband, a wife. I don't know who it is for you, a parent. But I wonder if you thought a little bit about those people who've shifted your perspective. It's pretty amazing to leverage that and channel some of that stuff to take into what you do on a daily basis. That's what leadership is about, right? So again, help your team see the field, see the game, not just the play. Such an important area. So that's what I want to share with you today on today's podcast. And hopefully that's helpful for you and something you're able to take and implement and utilize. That's our job as coaches, as leaders. And with that, I always appreciate your time. Thank you for taking time to be with me on the podcast today. Please, leave us any comments, reach out to our team, leave us a nice 5-star review, of course, if you would. But again, thank you so much for your time. Have a great day and just continue to crush it. Go get after it. Thank you for joining us today on the Matt Phillips Podcast. If you are like us, we know that you are here to do great things, to become the sales leader that makes things happen and drives big time sales results. We know you have that big vision, and we are here to help get you where you want to go. We're here to help you develop that unstoppable, rock solid leadership skill set and help you train to master the one true differentiator, mental toughness. We would love to be part of your journey. So if you are ready, head over to mattphillipscoaching.com and check out the ways that we can help. As always, please share this episode and make sure you subscribe by clicking the button below. Thank you again. And now, go crush the day.